血の匂いがするぞ。
Hello everyone, Skippy here, and welcome to One Piece episode 893, the next chapter in the hotly anticipated Wano Arc. Currently, the One Piece TV anime has 3 series directors, with Nagamine being the main series director who's made all of the changes and dictates the overall look of the show. But because of how hands-on he is with the anime, Kohei Kareta and Ayo Kamaki serve as assistant series directors to take on some of the workload and make sure his vision for a cool One Piece is seen through. Now, I mention this not only because it's important, but also because these latter 2 series directors are directing the next 2 episodes of the anime, with today's subject being Kohei Kareta and the supervisor for this episode, Shuichi Ito. Kareta has had a bit of an interesting history with One Piece, with his first involvement with the franchise being assistant director and co-storyboard artist on Nagamine's film Z, before having his first episode on the anime actually be storyboard only with episode 596. He then moved on to Saint Seiya Omega, where he assisted Nagamine as co-series director for the last batch of episodes in season 2. He came back during the Dressrosa arc and delivered his first fully directed and boarded episode on the anime with episode 657, where he showed his skill as an action director despite not really being the best one out there. After later storyboarding the rather nice and well animated episode 678, Kareta would then leave One Piece again to become a regular director on the Precure franchise and co-directing the 2017 series Kira Kira Precure a la Mode. After Kira Kira, he moved back to the TV anime in 2018 as a regular director this time around, and showed just how good he's gotten since Dressrosa. He directed some of the best episodes in the Whole Cake Island arc, such as the action-filled episode 841 and the legendary episode 870, fully proving himself as one of the best regular directors on the anime. Now he gets his first chance to work with Shuichi Ito. Ito started off as a key animator on One Piece with episode 278, but he didn't really start impressing a whole lot until around late pre-timeskip, where he proved himself as a competent action and effects animator who had a knack for really distinctive and fluffy smoke. Starting with post-timeskip, he was improving more and more as the arcs went on, improving his overall movement but keeping his rather nice smoke. He was then finally made an animation supervisor in the Dressrosa arc, starting with episode 715, the much-loved Senior Pink flashback episode. Since then, Ito has shown himself to be one of the best and most consistent supervisors on the anime, producing super clean art that's since evolved into a style similar to Chief Supervisor Keiichi Ichikawa's. Though his art has caused fans to give him the rather hilarious nickname of Pancake Face Guy because of how round and pancake-like he tends to draw the characters' faces. One ace director with connections to Nagamine and a top-tier animation supervisor and key animator. Combine the 2 staff members and what you get is an overall really good episode that mainly shows the strengths of Kareta as an action director. This episode covers the last 2 pages of chapter 910 and the first 11 pages of chapter 911. Now, it mostly follows those 2 chapters relatively closely, but there are a few differences. Let's first start off with scenes that are portrayed a bit differently in the anime, starting with the flashback to Luffy and co. making their way to Wano amidst the whirlpool. For the most part, it follows the scene pretty well in terms of how it goes about the events, but there's quite a bit of extended conversation between the people that Sanji's taking with him that wasn't in the manga originally. The scene overall feels a lot more elongated and less quick and comedic than it did originally. Obviously, this is done as a method of padding the episode out, and it's not exactly the worst thing they could do, but there's a bit of goofiness to the overall scene that's lost here. I don't mind it completely, and it's really not too big of a deal, but I'm certainly going to miss the Sunny making a comedic face as Luffy tells it that he'll find it later. Next up in terms of scenes that were a bit different was the scene with Luffy attacking Kaido's soldier. In the manga, Luffy hits Kaido's soldier before he can even shoot, which shows just how much he's improved since his fight with Katakuri. In the anime, however, Luffy clearly predicts the shot, dodges it, and then attacks before the soldier is able to fire another round. As well as that, there's also a couple of shots from the second soldier of Kaido's before Luffy takes him out as he did in the manga. Now personally, I don't mind the change since I feel like the extension of the fight still plainly shows the new feats that Luffy has reached, finished, but I can understand how people may feel like it's too extended and that the manga's events are far superior at telegraphing it. Now, other than a brief O-Tama flashback of her yelling at the soldiers from later in the chapter that was pushed up a bit, and some small extensions to other scenes, that's basically it in terms of scenes that were portrayed a bit differently in the anime. But in terms of scenes that weren't in the manga at all, this episode adds 2 scenes dealing with Zoro and the rest of the Straw Hats in Wano following the events of last episode. The first scene is Zoro grabbing his swords and blowing the rest of the magistrate's men away with a good old Tatsumaki, while the second scene shows the reactions that the Straw Hats are having to this news, as well as Zoro making his way back into town. Now, while I think the transitions to these scenes could have been a bit better overall, I feel like they were both really smart and cute additions that really gave more insight into what's going on with Zoro's whole situation, rather than doing what the manga did in ignoring it and just letting us see Zoro again later. It's what I mentioned last week, where they're expanding on the groundwork laid by Oda in order to give the audience the bigger picture, which leads into my final thoughts on the adaptation. There will no doubt be a lot of people who will take issue with some of the changes made in this episode, but I overall felt like they only added to the experience and adapted the chapter pretty well. A lot of the things that Oda wanted to show to the audience, like Luffy's new and improved observation haki, may be adapted a bit differently, but I feel like it still fully gets the point across and is able to stand with the rest of the episode and its added scenes to deliver a different but still solid adaptation to this overall chapter. Storyboard-wise, I feel like this episode really gives you a good look at Kureta's ability to storyboard action. While the majority of the episode is packed to the brim with an assortment of really cool angles that add flavor to the story that Kureta is trying to tell, it's the action scenes that are the real highlights. Kureta, when not copying directly from the manga, frames the action in an intense yet focused fashion. It's crazy when it needs to be, it's focused when it wants to give you a full look at the battle that is currently unfolding, and it's certainly not afraid of giving you some really nice far shots and low angles as Luffy's both powering up an attack and dashing towards the enemy. Not once are you going to feel as if the board is lacking in any respect in the action department, as Kureta's board not only understands how to frame cool action while it's at its peak, but it also knows when to give the viewer some breathing room during it all to give the full picture of what's going on. It doesn't feel overly cluttered, it keeps itself fresh by trying out a variety of shots, and when coupled together with the rest of the storyboard and its fun ways of spicing up normal scenes, it makes for a really stylistically cool storyboard that makes the episode itself almost feel cinematic in a way. It feels a lot more large scale than small scale, and for something like One Piece, which has often been limited by the restrictions of being a TV anime, it is more than welcome. Interestingly enough, the staff for this week's episode is actually not made up of entirely in-house Toei staff. Most of the key animators on the list are actually animators who hail from Studio Cosmo, meaning that this episode is actually outsourced for the most part. Now, while that definitely does make sense considering last week's episode and the quality that they likely want to maintain, Cosmo shows that they are more than capable of getting the episode done, even going so far as to surprise me with a really well-animated character acting scene with O-Tama. Couple that together with the usual polished pancake faces from Shuichi Ito and super well done corrections from Ichikawa, and you get an episode that feels well put together animation wise. I have to say that despite how much I really do love Matsuda's designs, it feels great to see Ichikawa's gorgeous corrections once again, and especially so on Robin. But Cosmo isn't the only one doing a lot of work in this episode, as we also have 2 super nice cuts of action animation that are brought to us by some in-house Toei staff who we are more than familiar with. The first bit of noteworthy action is brought to us by Katsumi Ishizuka, and oh my good god. Ishizuka animates Zoro's super intense Tatsumaki that I mentioned earlier, and holy hell is it just as visceral as we would expect. While not packed with an insane amount of movement, the scene is packed with Ishizuka's crazy modern looking wind effects that almost resemble that of a crackling fire and make the impact of the wind feel even more strong. Couple that with his gorgeous character art and amazing little spin that Zoro does, which is just so cool, and you get yet another impactful scene from Ishizuka that stands as quite possibly the most well-animated Tatsumaki in the entire anime. On top of that, we also have the One Piece anime's resident workhorse Chu Young-seo popping up to deliver the fight scene between Luffy and Kaido's men. Chu has been one of the rising stars of the One Piece anime throughout this past year, and you can absolutely see why here. Along with his very modern effects, Chu peppers this entire scene with the cool and lively movement that he is known very well for, with every little second of the scene being filled with smears. Whether it be Luffy attacking or Kaido's men just simply cocking and pointing their guns, there's these pretty smears at every turn that go together well with his effects and character-filled animation. Chu without a doubt was able to make Luffy's battle feel just as cool and exciting as it needed to be, and he did so effortlessly, while also animating upwards of 80 cuts on the episode as a whole. It's a super fun and kinetic action scene that serves as a great accompanying piece for Ishizuka's scene and the rest of the episode. And that's really how I describe this episode as a whole. It's fun. It's an episode that gets this monumental arc going in a big way. The adaptation, animation, and storyboard all help to give us an energetic kickstart into Wano after last week did its job at selling the country's overall atmosphere. With Ayokamaki's episode next week looking to find a middleman between both styles of episodes, I can without a doubt say that Wano is truly shaping up to be something special. Anyways guys, that's it for now. I'm Skippy, and next episode is surely going to be one that'll heat things up.